Hey folks, this is Cindy. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope that all of you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Today we're going to be taking a look at some no-line coloring. Now, I know that there is a lot of people that are kind of shy away from no-line coloring, but it can be really easy. The one that I'm sharing with you today is kind of the middle of the road. It's a fairly simple shape, but it does have a little bit of detail to it and is totally doable. This is the Paper Smooches Graceful Beauties stamp set. It is a solid image stamp set, but we can still color this in, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So I have some Nina Solar White cardstock in my Misty stamping tool. You can totally use a stamp block if you don't have a Misty. This does, however, make it a little bit easier because you can load up multiple stamps at once and get them stamped down, and it goes a little bit faster. So I want my butterflies to kind of go diagonally across my panel, and I want them to vary in what position I put them on there. So I do kind of fiddle with these a little bit because I know how I want it to look when I have them all stamped out. But if you want to make it a little bit easier, you could basically do these just straight up and down on the panel and it would still look great. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Cotton Candy ink because this is the butterfly that I'm going to color in pink. As you could see, all of my butterflies will have been stamped in a rainbow color. And this is what I was talking about, where you can stamp multiple images at once. So I have two of the butterflies loaded up here on my Misty. The one there on the bottom is going to be purple. The one on the top is going to be in blue. And I'm just cleaning that off really well before I load that ink up again, because I did do some test stamping with my inks before I started this card panel. And I just wanted to make sure that it's nice and clean. I am going to use Simon Says Stamp Thistle ink for my purple butterfly and Simon Says Stamp Sea Glass ink for my blue butterfly. Now that blue one's going to look kind of funny, but it's fine. When we start coloring these, you're not even going to notice. And then I'm going to put that big butterfly right back there in the middle. And then I decided I kind of didn't like how it looked, and then my card panel shifted as well. So I'm going to resituate that, and it's not a big deal. Now, I did do the three large butterflies first because they are the largest. They are going to take up the most space on my panel, and I want to be able to tuck those little ones in around it. So that's why I'm stamping those first. This is Simon Says Stamp Lemon Chiffon ink, and it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous yellow. I don't get to use this color nearly enough. And now I have a couple of more butterflies loaded up on my Misty. The red one is going to be stamped in Teeny Bikini. Now, I am going to tell you that this is going to look really dark. Again, that's fine. We're going to be using some really bold Copic colors, so you're not even going to notice it. If that's a concern for you, definitely use a much lighter ink. Like Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige ink would be great for this, as well as any other light ink that you'd like to use. Now I'm going to be using Simon Says Stamp Mint Candy ink for my blue-green, and then the Simon Says Stamp Dusty Sage ink for my green butterfly. And it is really that easy. We're not doing any masking, nothing. We're just stamping directly over the top of them, because how we color this is how it's going to end up in the end. So that red butterfly is going to look like it's directly over the top of that pink butterfly, and that's just fine. We don't need to mask it out because you're not even going to notice it once we're done coloring it. So now I'm going to start coloring these, and I am going to tell you that I did lose some of the footage, so I get to show you enough that you get the idea of it, but you don't get to see me color all of them. So I'm starting with the purple butterfly, and this is my lightest color. This is the V12, and I'm just mapping out where my shadows are going to go. It's not a very large butterfly, so I don't need to add a whole bunch of shadow to it, just enough that you can see the definition of the butterfly when it's done being colored. So I'm just kind of going in a little lightly with the V12 because I'm going to go directly over the top of that with my darkest color, which is going to be the V09. And I'm leaving enough space for that little body in between the butterfly's wings. And basically, I'm just doing flicking motions. Now, when I'm done coloring these, as you're going to see, these butterflies are going to almost look like they're kind of bubbly. They kind of have a bubble shape to them. They don't look flat at all. And that's just fine. There's other techniques that you could do that would make them look more flat, but I was definitely going for a more bubbled look because I thought it added just a little bit more character to each of the butterflies. Now I have my V09 and this is my darkest color. And again, I'm just using flicking motions. The other thing I'm going to tell you is make sure that you're varying the lengths of each of your flicks, of each of your colors, because if you don't, you're going to get a wall of color when it's done, when you're done coloring it. And you're going to see what I mean on that pink butterfly. I wasn't paying attention and I did it just exactly that. And then I ended up having to go back in and fixing that when the card was finished, but that's just fine. It's just something to keep in mind as you color. Now I am at my second lightest color. This is the V04. These are my favorite purple combination. I love these colors together. I think they look so gorgeous, and I'm generally not a big fan of purple, but these look great. This is a good combination for you if you struggle with purples. I am going to leave quite a bit of highlight on each of these butterflies because not only does it help contribute to the idea that these are more like a bubble shape, but also it helps give the eye the illusion that these wings curve, and that's exactly what you want to achieve when you color these in. So I am using 4 markers for each of these butterflies, but you really don't need to do that. You could totally get away with 3. You could do a light, a medium, and a dark, and you would be just fine. I decided to go with 4 because I like how they blend better. And also, I felt like I had more to cover up it because I was using a colored ink underneath them. But again, you don't have to do that. 3 colors would be just fine. So the pink butterfly is colored exactly the same way as that purple one. They're the same exact shape. Now you can see on that right wing there where there's kind of a wall of dark pink there, and that's what I was talking about, that you don't want to do that. I didn't vary my strokes enough, so that's what happens when you do that, but you can always go back later and fix that. So now I'm coloring in the red one. This one is just a little bit different. It's a slightly different shape than the other 2, but it's still just as easy. The other thing that you could do with all of these butterflies is you wouldn't have to add in the extra detail. If no line coloring is something that you struggle with, then you could either choose a more simple image to color, or you can definitely take an image like this and you could skip adding some of the detail. So what I would do if I were going to skip any of that detail is I would do my shadows from the inside of the wing that's closest to the body, a little bit ways out, and then I would take my shadow color again and work from the edge of the wing towards the body. I would just make sure that I left enough space in the center so I had that highlight. That way you still get the idea that that wing is curving, and then you don't have to worry about these little itty bitty lines. You don't have to worry about coloring outside of your stamped image as much. It kind of makes it quite a bit easier. And in one of the sneak peeks I'm going to show you at the end of the video, that's exactly what I did. I chose a more simple image and I just colored from the outside in towards the center of it, and it was so easy. Okay, so I chose these really bold colors for these butterflies. You could definitely do these in any color combination you wanted. You wouldn't even have to do rainbow, anything you like. The only thing that you're going to keep in mind is when you go to stamp them to begin with, you need to use whatever ink that is going to complement your colors. So if you're going to use like a more pastel marker, or if you were going to watercolor this and use more pastels, if you were going to use colored pencils and use more pastel colors, then you would definitely need to stamp them in a lighter ink. But you could choose any color that you'd like and they would still turn out amazing. I like a dark, bold color, and I really, really love a bold rainbow. So I chose darker inks and darker markers. but you can do anything you like. So now I'm finishing up this red butterfly, and at this point I still hadn't decided what I'm going to do with the bodies of the butterflies. I do show you this, but I do end up coloring them in with gray Copics. You could use any color that you wanted. You could even color these in with a black pen if you would like. A Copic multiliner would work just great. I decided to keep this completely no line and use 100% Copics on all of the butterflies. So I'll show you how that works out more in the end. All right, now I did manage to keep the footage for these itty bitty butterflies, and I wanted to show you how I did these. I did use 4 markers on them. They are so tiny, it's ludicrous to use that many markers on them. This is another one where you could use 3 markers, but you could even get away with only using 2 of them. They are so small that basically you're only going to give the idea that there's this shape of a butterfly here and it has a little bit of dimension. It's not going to stand out nearly as much as all of the other butterflies do. So you really don't need to put as much effort into it as I did. All right, so now I'm getting ready to color in the bodies, and I did a test run on that red one, and then I decided, okay, that's good enough. So I'm going in and going to do the rest of them the same way. And I'm only going to use the 1 C5 Copic marker on them. If you wanted to add more dimension and depth and kind of give these bodies a little bit more detail, you totally could. You could do a C1, a C3, and a C5, and that would look fabulous. But that's really not what is going to get your attention on this card panel, so I skipped it and just used the 1 color. Now, I got lazy on this one. Out of the 2 cards I did like this, the first one I totally did no line coloring on the little hearts that I stamped on there. On this one, I decided to skip that. So I'm stamping these hearts in with Simon Says Stamp Slate ink, and I'll add a little bit of embellishment to them, just because I could, really. But you wouldn't even have to do that much. And I sped this up because I got to tell you, folks, one of the reasons why I don't put a lot of embellishments on my cards, and I consider these little itty bitty stamps like this a sort of embellishment, but it takes me forever to decide where I want to put them. And a lot of the times I just decide if I have to put that much effort into it, I'm not going to do it. I'm all about making things as easy as possible. All right, so I am going to go over only the highlights on all of the butterflies, and I don't show you all of them, but I am doing all of them with my Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen, and I'm just sticking strictly to the highlights. Again, it helps reinforce that they're curved and they have some dimension, and I love how that looks. Now I'm taking my Stardust Sakura Jelly Roll pen, and I'm going over the little gray hearts. I don't think I show you in the video, but I also end up going over, actually I do show you in the video. I end up going over those again with a Sakura clear glazed pen just to add a little bit more dimension on them. Plus it also helps kind of spread out some of that glitter ink that I put on them with the Stardust pen. And it looks kind of cool. And then I'm also going to do each of the bodies on the butterflies to add just a little bit more dimension, and then that's pretty much going to be it. Now, the first card I did like this, I added quite a bit of a drop shadow behind each of these butterflies, and I wasn't going to do that on this one. Normally what I would do is I would add that drop shadow before I added any other pens, like the gel pens or the glaze pens or anything like that. And then I started looking at it and I decided, no, I need to add a little bit of something. So I do add a very, very light drop shadow on this, and I stay as far away as from any of those pins that I put on there as possible because I don't want to drag my Copic through it. So I'm just taking the C1 and I'm adding the drop shadow as if the light source is in the top right hand corner, and I chose that because this does go at a diagonal more to the right. So when you look at this, you would want your drop shadow to match the direction that your butterflies are going. And they go from the lower left hand of the panel to the upper right. So that's where I chose my drop shadow. And then I'm going to blend that out with the C00, and then I felt like my lines were a little too harsh after I blended that out. So I do end up going in with the colorless blender, the 0 Copic marker, and just blend those out a wee bit more. Now, it doesn't add a whole lot to it. It doesn't. I mean, you could definitely tell the difference between the two card panels, but it does add a little bit of something, and you can see it probably a little bit more in real life than you do there in the video. But that's also something that you can do if you're kind of a little leery about doing drop shadows. Just keep it to 2 colors. Just keep it really light. You'll still get the effect, but you won't have to worry about ruining anything when you do it. So that's it. I mounted it on a Nina Solar White card panel. I mounted both of them on a Nina Solar White card panel and called it a day. Now, I do have a couple of other cards that I'm going to show you. I'm going to be doing videos of these here in the near future. Again, they are both no line coloring. Now, these I would call middle of the road no line coloring. The other two they're a little bit different. They have a little bit different approach because they're different types of images. This one is the W+9 Christmas Rose Bouquet stamp set. This is 100% no line coloring, and that one has a lot more detail. This one is from the Hero Arts November My Monthly Hero card kit. This was super easy. I used a die, I traced it, and I colored them in, and then I finished it off with some stamps from the Hero Arts Pine Branches stamp set. And that's it. We are good to go. I have details and links over on my blog as well as in the description below. I will also have Black Friday through Cyber Monday links for you in the description below in case you need some retail therapy just like I do. I really hope you enjoyed my card today. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and share it with your crafty friends for me. Also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and tap that bell next to the subscribe button so you can receive all future notifications. Thanks again so much for stopping by. Until next time.